children are not mine.
Let me explain.
After everything I've done for you, I loved you, I gave you everything. All the trips to Paris, to Florence in Italy, I gave you everything money can buy.
I'm sorry. But you are not around. I was lonely. You left me in this big house. Everything I wanted to feel loved. Money is in everything.
Obenna grew up in a small dusty town where poverty wore every face he knew. While other children played football in the streets, young Obenna sat at the cracked veranda of his mother's house, staring at the distant horizon with hungry eyes. When I become rich, he would whisper to himself, all my problems will disappear. He believed that the way a drowning man believes in a rope, completely, desperately. His mother, a tired woman who sold groundnuts at the roadside, would overhear him and sigh. She never corrected him. Perhaps she didn't have the heart. Perhaps she didn't know how. So the dream grew. Through secondary school, through hunger, through nights when there was no light and he read by a candle stop. Obenna nurtured one belief: money was the answer to everything. He graduated from university with a second-class upper, shook hands with the lecturers who barely recognized his name, and stepped into the world like a soldier marching into war. He was ready, he was hungry, he was certain. What he didn't know, what nobody had warned him, was that life doesn't stop throwing problems simply because your pocket gets heavy. Nobody told him that wealth has a front door and a back door, and through the back door walks everything we never expected. But that lesson was still far away. For now, Obenna was chasing gold, and gold, it seemed, was running. For 3 years after graduation, Obenna knocked on doors that never opened. He wrote proposals. He dressed sharply for interviews, where they never called back. He dropped quotations at agencies, construction firms, government offices, folded papers carrying his hope inside them like secrets. His colleagues gave up one by one. This country is not for us, his friend Chuka said, accepting a teaching job in a primary school. Manage what you can find, but Obenna refused. Every Friday, he visited one agency, a federal housing development board, and dropped an updated quotation for a construction contract they had advertised for 18 months. The receptionist knew his face. She pitied him. She never said it, but she said it in her eyes. Then one Tuesday morning, his phone rang from an unknown number. His heart barely responded. Too many disappointments had dulled it. Is this Obenna Nwosu? A formal voice asked. Yes, your quotation has been selected. Report to our office Thursday with your company documents. The phone slipped from his hand. He stood in the middle of his one-room apartment, the cracked wall, the second-hand mattress, the single gas burner, and something cracked open inside his chest. He didn't shout, he didn't jump. He simply sat on the floor and wept silently. He didn't know if he was crying from joy or if somewhere deep inside him something was already afraid. Within 2 years, Obenna became a name, not just a name people recognized, a name people feared, respected, and desperately wanted to be connected to. His construction firm, Cold Rock Development, delivered the housing project ahead of schedule, and the quality silenced every competitor would have whispered that he was too young, too unknown. More contracts came, then investments, then properties. By 34, he owned 4 houses, 2 in Lagos and 2 abroad. He would wake up in Abuja and sleep in London without checking his account balance. Private jets felt ordinary. Designer suits stopped exciting him. You have arrived, people told him constantly. Their eyes glittered with something between admiration and envy. And then he met Adaeze. She walked into a business dinner as a guest of a client, breathtaking, beautiful, composed, intelligent. She laughed at the right moment and stayed silent at the right ones. Obenna, a man who had conquered contracts and boardrooms, found himself completely disarmed. He pursued her for 8 months. 8 months of flower, trips, letters. Obenna, who had never chased anything without meaning. When she finally said yes, he felt a joy that no contract had ever given him. They married in a ceremony that Lagos talked about for a year. He had money, now he had love. He thought, finally, the picture was complete. He had no idea a piece of that picture was already missing. For the first 5 years, their marriage was the kind other couples quietly envied. Obenna and Adaeze were a portrait of success. School runs in Range Rover, family vacation in Dubai, anniversary dinner in Paris. 3 children arrived and filled their mansion with noise and laughter. First a son, Tobechukwu, then twin girls, Adana and Chisom. Obenna worked hard and came home harder, tired, distracted, generous with money but scarce with presence. He told himself it was all for them. The new project in Abuja, the expansion into real estate in London, the meetings that ran past midnight. The children asked about you, Adaeze said one evening, quietly, without accusation. I am doing all this for them, he answered, without looking up from his laptop. She didn't reply. She didn't notice the silence had a different weight than usual. What Obenna couldn't see, was that while he was building empires outside, something inside his home had slowly begun to grow cold. Small gaps that money kept patching over without ever truly healing. And into these cold, quiet gaps, something else was creeping. A name from Adaeze's past. A man who had known her before the wealth, before the mansion, before the life she now lived behind glass. Obenna was 1,000 miles away at a project meeting when his wife received a message on her phone and smiled, the kind of message he had not seen her wear in years. She quickly locked the screen, but the house help had seen it. It started with small signs that Obenna, busy man that he was, almost missed. Adaeze began wearing perfume on evenings. She claimed she was visiting her sister. She laughed differently on phone calls she took in another room. She was present at dinner but somehow unreachable, like a photograph of a wife rather than the real one. Then the house help, a quiet girl named Ngozi, slid a folded note under Obenna's office door one morning and disappeared before he could question her. He opened it slowly. 3 sentences, no signature. Your wife meets someone every Thursday at Lekki Phase 2. A man named Damilare. I am sorry, sir. Obenna sat motionlessly for a long time. He didn't explode. He didn't call Adaeze. He was a man who won contracts by staying calm under pressure. And some cold, mechanical part of him took over now. He hired a private investigator. He waited. 2 Thursdays later, the photographs arrived in a sealed envelope. He opened it alone in his study. Late at night, the house quiet around him, his children sleeping peacefully down the hall. He looked at each photograph once, then he closed the envelope, poured himself a glass of water, not whiskey, water, and stared at the wall until morning came. In that silence, a new thought arrived, cold, quiet, terrifying. If she could do this, what else has she hidden? Obenna said nothing to Adaeze, not immediately. He moved through the house like a man who had learned a new language overnight. Every smile now a translation, every touch now a question. He watched his children at breakfast, Tobechukwu's serious eyes, Adana's loud laugh, Chisom's habit of tilting her head exactly the way Adaeze did. Did they look like him? He hated himself for asking. He hated himself more for being unable to stop. The thoughts, once planted, grew savage roots. He contacted a private clinic, discreet professional, a doctor who asked no questions. DNA samples were collected quietly. A strand of hair from each child. A swab Obenna provided himself. Results in 7 days, the doctor said. Those 7 days were the longest of Obenna's life, longer than 3 years he has chased contracts, longer than the 8 months he had pursued Adaeze. He barely ate. His project manager asked twice if he was ill. He smiled and said he was fine. He was not fine. He sat in a boardroom approving million-dollar decision while his phone sat face down on the table, waiting for a message that would either restore his world or destroy it entirely. On the 7th day, the message came. Results ready. Please come in person. Only in person. That alone told him something. Obenna drove himself. No driver, no assistant, just him and the road and the terrifying possibility that the life he had built, the expensive, carefully constructed life, was built on ground that was never his. The doctor's office smelled of antiseptic and quiet professionalism. The man across the desk had kind eyes, which somehow made it worse. He opened the folder slowly, the way people do when they already know the words inside will cause damage and want to delay the moment. Even by second, Mr. Nwosu, he began carefully. The DNA results for all 3 children. He paused. None of them are a biological match to you. The room didn't shake. No thunder arrived. The light stayed on. The clock kept moving. Somewhere outside the car horn sounded ordinarily, but Obenna felt the floor vanish beneath him. 3 children, 10 years, every school fees, every birthday, every night he had stood at a doorway watching them sleep and felt his chest filled with something he thought was fatherhood. All of it had happened. None of it was what he believed. The doctor was still speaking. Something about support resources, counseling, confidentially, but the words arrived like sound from underwater. Obenna's body made the decision before his mind could agree. He simply fell. When he opened his eye, he was on a clinical bed, a nurse checking his pulse. The doctor stood nearby, concerning creasing his face. And in that white ceiling room, Obenna, the man who had contracts across 2 continents, who had turned poverty into an empire, wept like a child. Not for the money, not once for the money. The weeks that followed were the quietest of Obenna's life. Adaeze confessed everything when confronted. Damilare, her secondary school love, the years of deception, the children, she wept, she begged, she offered explanations that explained nothing. Obenna listened to all of it without raising his voice. Then he asked her to leave. The divorce was handled by lawyers. The mansion was sold. Obenna moved into a modest apartment, smaller than his first houseboy quarters in his Lekki mansion, and sat with his silence. People expected him to collapse publicly. He didn't. Instead, something unexpected happened. Stripped of the noise, the deals, the titles, the performance of success, Obenna began to think clearly for the first time. He called his mother, something he had done too rarely. He sat with old friends and laughed without an agenda. He visited an orphanage near his estate and spent a Saturday afternoon with children who called him uncle, simply because he showed up. One evening, watching the sun fall over Lagos from a small balcony, he finally understood what his mother's sighs had meant all those years on the cracked veranda. Money was never the answer. It was only a louder version of the same question. True peace, he realized, was never in the account balance. He lived in contentment, in knowing what you have, protecting what matters, and being present for the life happening right in front of you. He had been everywhere. He had missed everything.